Sarah Martinez had been working construction for 3 years, but this job felt different. The private shooting range outside San Diego was her biggest project yet, and she was determined to prove herself. At 26, she had already earned respect in a male-dominated field through pure grit and skill. Her father, a veteran himself, had taught her that hard work was the only currency that mattered. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete range as Sarah measured the damaged wall section. A vehicle had crashed into it the previous week, leaving a gaping hole that needed immediate repair. The range owner, Mike Patterson, was anxious to reopen. Military personnel from nearby Camp Pendleton used this facility regularly for training, and every day of closure meant lost revenue. Sarah pulled her measuring tape taut, making careful notes on her clipboard. The wall would need complete reconstruction from the foundation up. She estimated it would take her crew of 4 about 2 weeks to complete the job properly. The concrete would need time to cure, and the bulletproof backing had to be installed with precision. As she worked, Sarah noticed a group of men in military fatigues arriving at the range. They moved with the distinctive confidence she recognized from her father's old Marine buddies. These weren't regular weekend shooters. Their gear was professional grade, and they carried themselves like operators. Mike Patterson emerged from the range office and walked over to greet the military group. Sarah could hear fragments of their conversation drifting across the concrete. Something about maintaining training schedules despite the construction. The leader of the group, a tall man with intense gray eyes, glanced over at Sarah's work area. Sarah tried to focus on her measurements, but she couldn't help noticing how the team methodically set up their equipment. They worked with surgical precision, each person knowing exactly what to do without need for verbal instruction. Their rifles were unlike anything she'd seen at her local gun store. These were serious weapons for serious people. The gray-eyed man approached Mike and pointed towards Sarah's construction zone. She caught the words safe distance and ricochet concerns. Mike nodded and walked over to where Sarah was crouched next to the damaged wall. "Sarah, we've got a situation," Mike said, removing his baseball cap and running his hand through his graying hair. "These Navy SEALs need to maintain their training rotation. The range closure is affecting their mission readiness." Sarah looked up from her notes. "I understand the urgency, Mike, but this wall needs to be rebuilt properly. Rushing the job could create safety issues later." Mike nodded. "I'm not asking you to rush. But is there any way you could work around their training schedule? Maybe coordinate so both operations can happen safely?" Sarah considered the request. She'd worked around active construction sites before, but never around military firearms training. The liability concerns alone made her nervous. Still, she understood the importance of military readiness, especially given her family's service background. "I need to understand their training patterns," Sarah said finally. "When they shoot, where they position themselves, what kind of impact patterns we're dealing with. I can't have my crew working in an unsafe environment." Mike smiled with relief. "I was hoping you'd say that. The team leader wants to discuss the logistics with you directly." Sarah gathered her tools and followed Mike toward the group of SEALs. As they approached, she noticed the gray-eyed man watching her with professional assessment. He was probably evaluating whether a civilian contractor could handle working around their operations. "Sarah Martinez, meet Chief Petty Officer James Mitchell," Mike said, facilitating the introduction. "Chief Mitchell, Sarah's our contractor handling the wall reconstruction." James Mitchell extended his hand with a firm grip. "Ms. Martinez, I appreciate you considering a collaborative approach. Most contractors would simply shut us out completely." Sarah met his gaze directly. "My father served 2 tours in Afghanistan with the Marines. I understand the importance of maintaining training readiness." Something shifted in Mitchell's expression. The professional assessment remained, but now carried a hint of respect. "What unit?" "2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Staff Sergeant Carlos Martinez." Mitchell nodded slowly. "Good unit. Saw action in Helmand Province." "Among other places," Sarah confirmed. The brief exchange established a foundation of mutual respect that would prove crucial in the coming days. Mitchell understood that Sarah wasn't just another civilian contractor trying to maximize profit. She had personal investment in supporting military operations. "Here's what I'm thinking," Mitchell said, switching to business mode. "My team trains here Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 0700 to 1100 hours. We also need the range Wednesday evenings for night vision exercises. Sarah pulled out a small notebook and began sketching a rough timeline. I can work with that. My crew starts at 6:30, so we need to clear the impact zone by 6:45 on your training days. Wednesday evening shoots would require us to wrap up by 1700 hours. That works for our schedule, Mitchell confirmed. But I want to observe your work area personally before we proceed. Understanding your construction patterns helps me ensure my team's safety. Over the next hour, Sarah walked Mitchell through her reconstruction plan. She showed him where the new foundation would be poured, how the bulletproof backing would be installed, and what equipment her crew would be using. Mitchell asked detailed questions about concrete curing times, material storage locations, and potential debris patterns. Sarah found herself impressed by Mitchell's analytical approach. He wasn't just going through the motions for liability purposes. He was genuinely concerned about creating a safe working environment for both her crew and his team. One concern, Mitchell said as they concluded the walkthrough. Your cement mixer will be positioned directly behind our primary firing line. During live fire exercises, we need absolute certainty that no one is in that zone. Sarah studied the layout, considering alternatives. I could relocate the mixer to the eastern side of the range. It would require longer hose runs for concrete delivery, but it keeps my equipment out of your operational area. That would work better, Mitchell agreed. Also, I'd like to establish clear communication protocols. When my team is conducting live fire, I need immediate confirmation that your crew is in designated safe zones. Sarah appreciated his thoroughness. I can set up radio communication between your team and my foreman. We'll use Channel 7, which stays clear of emergency frequencies. As they finalized the logistics, Sarah noticed other members of Mitchell's team observing their conversation. They seemed curious about the civilian contractor who was taking such detailed safety precautions. One of them, a younger SEAL with lieutenant's bars, approached with a question about concrete dust and its potential impact on precision optics. Sarah explained how her crew would use water suppression systems to minimize dust during cutting and grinding operations. She also offered to schedule the dustiest work during times when the SEALs wouldn't be training. The lieutenant nodded approvingly and returned to his team preparation. You seem to know your business, Mitchell observed. Construction safety isn't negotiable, Sarah replied, especially when military operations are involved. Mitchell's gray eyes studied her for a moment. Most civilians get nervous around military training. You seem comfortable with the environment. Sarah shrugged. I grew up around it. My father brought me to the base occasionally when I was young. Military precision and construction precision aren't that different. Both require attention to detail and respect for safety protocols. Fair point, Mitchell acknowledged. As the conversation wound down, Mike Patterson joined them to confirm the final arrangements. Sarah would begin foundation prep the following Monday, with the first potential overlap occurring Tuesday morning when Mitchell's team returned for their regular training session. I'll have my crew here Monday at 06:30 to establish our work zones, Sarah told Mitchell. We'll run a communication check on Channel 7 before your team arrives Tuesday morning. Copy that, Mitchell responded, automatically falling into military communication patterns. Sarah gathered her measuring tools and notebooks, preparing to return to her truck for the drive back to her office. She had a detailed proposal to prepare for Mike, including the modified timeline that would accommodate the SEAL training schedule. As she walked toward her vehicle, she heard Mitchell addressing his team about the new construction timeline. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to coordinating complex operations with multiple moving parts. Sarah found herself wondering about his background and what kind of missions required such intensive training. The following Monday morning arrived gray and foggy, typical for coastal San Diego in early autumn. Sarah's crew assembled at the shooting range as planned, unloading tools and materials in the designated areas she'd marked during her site survey. Her foreman, Tony Ramirez, had initially expressed reservations about working around active military training. Tony had been in construction for 15 years, but this was his first project involving weapons ranges. Sarah spent extra time walking him through the safety protocols she'd established with Mitchell. The key thing to remember, Sarah explained as they set up the work area, is that communication and discipline keep everyone safe. When the military team is training, We follow their lead completely. Tony nodded, checking his radio and confirming it was set to Channel 7. How often do you think we'll need to coordinate with them? Initially, probably daily until we establish a smooth routine, Sarah replied. Once everyone understands the patterns, it should become automatic. The crew spent Monday completing the preliminary foundation work without incident. Sarah's radio remained quiet on Channel 7, confirming that no training sessions were scheduled for the day. By late afternoon, they had successfully removed the damaged concrete and prepared the area for the new foundation pour. Tuesday morning brought the first real test of the coordination system. Sarah arrived at the range at 6:15 to ensure everything was ready for the SEAL team's arrival. She positioned herself with a clear view of both her work area and the range entrance, radio in hand. At exactly 6:55, she heard the distinctive sound of military vehicles approaching. Mitchell's team arrived with the same precision they brought to everything else. Sarah keyed her radio. Construction crew to training team, Channel 7 check. Mitchell's voice came back immediately. Training team to construction crew, good copy on Channel 7. Construction crew clear of impact zones, ready for your operations. Copy, construction crew. Training team beginning range setup. Sarah watched as Mitchell SEALs efficiently established their firing positions. Each team member moved with purpose, setting up equipment and checking safety zones. Within 10 minutes, they had transformed the range from a construction site back into a professional training facility. Mitchell approached Sarah's observation position. Smooth transition. Your crew's discipline is impressive. They understand the stakes, Sarah replied. When you're working around professionals, you better act like a professional yourself. Mitchell smiled slightly. Mind if I ask about your construction background? You've got more operational awareness than most contractors. Sarah appreciated the compliment. Started in residential construction right out of high school. Moved into commercial work after I got tired of dealing with homeowners who wanted to change everything mid-project. I like industrial construction because the requirements are clear and the standards are non-negotiable. Military training requirements are definitely non-negotiable, Mitchell agreed. They watched as Mitchell's team began their morning exercises. Sarah found herself fascinated by the systematic approach to marksmanship training. Each shooter followed identical preparation routines, adjusted their equipment with practiced efficiency, and maintained constant awareness of their surroundings. The training session lasted exactly until 1100 hours, as Mitchell had specified during their initial planning meeting. As soon as the last shots were fired and weapons were cleared, Mitchell's team began breaking down their equipment with the same precision they'd used to set it up. Construction crew, range clear for your operations, Mitchell radioed. Copy, training team. Construction crew resuming work activities. Sarah's crew returned to the foundation area and resumed their concrete preparation. The transition had been seamless, proving that the coordination system would work effectively throughout the project duration. The coordination between Sarah's construction crew and Mitchell's SEAL team continued smoothly through the second week of the project. Both groups had developed an efficient rhythm that maximized productivity while maintaining strict safety standards. Sarah found herself looking forward to the brief interactions with the military personnel, particularly the professional discussions with Mitchell about operational logistics. Thursday morning brought an unexpected challenge. Sarah arrived at the range to discover that her concrete supplier had delivered the wrong mixture for the bulletproof wall backing. The specialized concrete required specific aggregate compositions to properly support the steel reinforcement panels that would be installed behind the shooting positions. Sarah immediately called her supplier, but the replacement concrete wouldn't be available until the following Tuesday. This meant her crew would lose nearly a week of progress on the critical path items. She was calculating the impact on her project timeline when Mitchell approached. Problem with the concrete delivery? He asked, observing her crew's obvious frustration as they examined the incorrect materials. Wrong mixture specifications, Sarah explained, showing Mitchell the delivery receipt and her original order. The aggregate composition won't provide adequate support for the steel backing panels. Mitchell studied the technical specifications with interest. What kind of support requirements are we talking about? Sarah pulled out her engineering drawings, spreading them across the hood of her truck. The wall needs to withstand repeated high-velocity impacts without developing stress fractures. Standard concrete won't cut it. We need a mixture with specific steel fiber content and aggregate density. Interesting challenge, Mitchell observed. How long before you can get the correct materials? My supplier says Tuesday at the earliest. That puts us behind schedule and might affect your training rotation next week. Mitchell considered the situation. Actually, that might work out well for my team. We've got an extended training exercise scheduled for Monday through Wednesday next week. The range would have been unavailable anyway. Sarah felt relief wash over her. That's fortunate timing. If my concrete arrives Tuesday as promised, we can pour Wednesday and stay reasonably close to our original schedule. Sometimes these coordination challenges work out better than expected, Mitchell said. As the morning progressed, Sarah found herself with unexpected free time while her crew focused on preparatory tasks that didn't require the specialized concrete. She decided to observe Mitchell's training session more closely, both out of professional curiosity and personal interest stemming from her father's military background. The SEAL team was conducting precision shooting exercises that required extraordinary attention to detail. Each shooter fired carefully controlled groups, then analyzed their results with mathematical precision. Sarah was impressed by their systematic approach to improvement. During a brief break in the exercises, Mitchell noticed her observation and walked over. Different from civilian shooting, isn't it? He said. Completely different, Sarah agreed. The precision and consistency are remarkable. How do you maintain that level of accuracy under stress? Mitchell smiled. Practice, practice, practice. But it's more than just repetition. It's about understanding the fundamentals so completely that they become automatic, even when everything else is chaotic. Sarah found the concept fascinating. That's similar to construction work in some ways. When you're working with heavy equipment or dangerous materials, the safety procedures have to be automatic. You can't think your way through an emergency situation. Exactly right, Mitchell said. Muscle memory and mental discipline. Both fields require people to perform perfectly when the stakes are high. Their conversation was interrupted by one of Mitchell's team members approaching with a technical question about sight adjustments. Sarah listened with interest as Mitchell explained the physics of ballistic trajectories and how environmental factors affected accuracy. After the team member returned to his position, Mitchell turned back to Sarah. You seem genuinely interested in the technical aspects. I appreciate precision in any field, Sarah replied. My father always said that understanding how things work makes you better at your job, regardless of what that job is. Mitchell nodded approvingly. Smart man. Most people want shortcuts, but there really aren't any when lives depend on getting it right. The remainder of the week passed without incident. Sarah's crew completed all the preparatory work they could accomplish without the specialized concrete. Mitchell's team maintained their regular training schedule, and the coordination protocols had become routine for both groups. Friday afternoon brought an unexpected development. As Sarah was conducting her end-of-week site inspection, she noticed Mitchell approaching with a serious expression. Sarah, I have an unusual request, Mitchell began. My team is developing new training protocols that require civilian contractor input. Would you be interested in participating in a consultation session? Sarah was intrigued. What kind of consultation? We're working on operational scenarios that involve construction environments. Having someone with your expertise provide feedback could be valuable for our mission planning. Sarah considered the request carefully. She understood that military operations often occurred in construction zones, industrial facilities, and other civilian work environments. Her professional knowledge could indeed provide useful insights. I'd be willing to participate, as long as it doesn't interfere with my project timeline, she said. Excellent. The session is scheduled for Monday morning, during the time we would normally be training here anyway. Since your concrete isn't arriving until Tuesday, the timing works perfectly. Monday morning found Sarah in an unfamiliar environment. Mitchell had arranged for the consultation session to take place at a Camp Pendleton training facility designed to simulate urban combat scenarios. Sarah was surprised by the sophistication of the mock construction sites and industrial environments. Mitchell introduced her to the other members of his extended team, including intelligence analysts, mission planners, and specialists in urban warfare tactics. Sarah quickly realized that her participation involved much more than simply answering questions about construction equipment. We need to understand how civilian contractors think and operate. explained Lieutenant Commander Patricia Hayes, the lead mission planner. Your insights could help us predict how construction personnel might react during crisis situations. Sarah spent the morning walking through various scenarios with the SEAL team. They showed her detailed models of construction sites in different countries, explained potential security threats, and asked her to identify how contractors would typically respond to various disruptions. The experience was both educational and slightly unsettling. Sarah began to understand the complexity of modern military operations and how civilian activities could inadvertently affect mission success or failure. During a break in the consultation sessions, Mitchell approached Sarah with a more personal question. "How are you finding this experience?" he asked. "Eye-opening," Sarah replied honestly. "I never really thought about how construction work might intersect with military operations in overseas environments." "Most civilians don't," Mitchell said. "But understanding those intersections can be crucial for everyone's safety." The consultation session concluded with Sarah providing detailed technical information about construction equipment capabilities, typical work schedules in various cultural contexts, and how contractor personnel might react to security threats. As she prepared to leave Camp Pendleton, Lieutenant Commander Hayes approached with a final question. "Would you be interested in participating in additional consultation sessions? Your perspective has been extremely valuable." Sarah was flattered by the request, but wanted to consider the implications carefully. "Can I think about it and get back to you?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." Tuesday morning brought the arrival of Sarah's correct concrete mixture. Her crew was eager to make up for lost time, and the pour went smoothly. The specialized concrete would need 48 hours to cure properly before the steel backing panels could be installed. Mitchell's team returned Thursday morning for their regular training session. The newly poured concrete had cured enough to allow normal range operations, and the coordination between construction and training activities resumed without difficulty. During a brief conversation after the morning exercises, Mitchell asked about Sarah's thoughts regarding the consultation request. "I'm interested," Sarah said, "but I want to understand what would be expected of me." Mitchell nodded. "Fair question. The consultations would be occasional, probably once or twice a month. They'd focus on construction-related scenarios that our teams might encounter during overseas operations. Would this be compensated or volunteer work? The military has budget allocations for civilian technical consultants. You'd be compensated at appropriate professional rates." Sarah appreciated Mitchell's straightforward approach to the business aspects. "Let me discuss it with my business partner and see how it might fit with our project schedule." "No pressure," Mitchell assured her. "The offer stands whenever you're ready to consider it seriously." The following week marked a significant milestone in the wall reconstruction project. Sarah's crew successfully installed the steel backing panels and began the final concrete pour that would complete the bulletproof wall structure. The work was progressing ahead of the revised schedule, much to Mike Patterson's satisfaction. Friday afternoon brought another unexpected development. As Sarah was inspecting the nearly completed wall, she noticed Mitchell approaching with a different kind of expression than usual. "Sarah, I have something to discuss with you," Mitchell said, his tone more serious than their typical professional conversations. "What's on your mind?" Mitchell paused, choosing his words carefully. "My team has been observing your work throughout this project. Your professionalism, technical competence, and security awareness have been impressive." Sarah waited for him to continue. "We have a situation developing that might benefit from your specific expertise. It's not related to the consultation work we discussed earlier." "What kind of situation?" Mitchell looked around to ensure their conversation remained private. "There's a construction project overseas that needs civilian contractor support. The work involves building security infrastructure in a challenging environment." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. "You're talking about overseas military construction? I can't provide details unless you express serious interest. But, yes, it would involve supporting military operations in a foreign country." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. She'd built her construction business carefully over 3 years, focusing on steady domestic projects. An overseas military contract would represent both a significant opportunity and a considerable risk. "This is a big decision," Sarah said finally. "I understand completely," Mitchell replied. "Take whatever time you need to think about it. But I want you to know that my team would specifically request your participation based on what we've observed during this project. As Sarah drove home that evening, she found herself thinking about her father's military service and the stories he'd shared about supporting civilians in combat zones. She'd never imagined that her construction expertise might be relevant to military operations, but Mitchell's offer suggested otherwise. Sarah spent the weekend thinking about Mitchell's offer. The overseas military construction opportunity represented everything she'd worked toward in terms of professional recognition, but it also meant stepping into a world far removed from her comfortable San Diego routine. Sunday evening found her sitting in her father's living room, sharing the situation with the one person whose opinion mattered most. Carlos Martinez listened quietly as Sarah explained the project details she could share and the decision she faced. Mija, this sounds like the kind of opportunity that comes once in a career, her father said thoughtfully. But it's also the kind that changes everything about how you see your work. What do you mean? Carlos leaned back in his recliner, his eyes distant with memory. When I was overseas, I worked with civilian contractors who supported our operations. Some of them were just there for the money. But the good ones, the ones who really made a difference, they understood that construction work in a combat zone isn't just about building things. It's about supporting people who depend on you to do your job perfectly. Sarah nodded, understanding the weight behind her father's words. The question isn't whether you're capable of doing the work, Carlos continued. You've proven that already. The question is whether you're prepared for the responsibility that comes with it. Monday morning brought Sarah back to the shooting range with a clearer perspective. The wall reconstruction project was entering its final phase, with only finishing work remaining. Mitchell's team was conducting their regular training session, and Sarah found herself observing their operations with new appreciation for the complexity of military logistics. After the training session concluded, Mitchell approached Sarah for their usual coordination discussion. How's the final wall work progressing? He asked. We should be completely finished by Wednesday afternoon, Sarah replied. The wall will be ready for full operational use by Thursday morning. Outstanding. Mike will be pleased to have his range back to full capacity. Sarah took a deep breath, having decided on her approach to Mitchell's offer. I've been thinking about our conversation Friday, she said. I'm interested in learning more about the overseas project. Mitchell's expression remained professionally neutral, but Sarah caught a hint of approval in his eyes. Fair enough. Let me arrange a proper briefing session where you can get the information you need to make an informed decision. What would that involve? A meeting with the project planning team, detailed mission briefings, and honest discussion about the risks and requirements. No commitments until you have all the facts. Sarah appreciated Mitchell's straightforward approach. When would this briefing take place? I can arrange it for Friday afternoon, after your project here is completely finished. That way you're not distracted by ongoing responsibilities. Wednesday afternoon arrived with Sarah's crew putting the finishing touches on the reconstructed wall. The specialized concrete had cured properly, the steel backing panels were securely installed, and the final protective coatings had been applied according to specification. Mike Patterson conducted his final inspection with obvious satisfaction. The new wall exceeded all safety requirements and would provide decades of reliable service for the shooting range. Sarah, this is outstanding work, Mike said as he signed off on the completion documents. I'll definitely be recommending your company for future projects. Sarah felt the satisfaction that came with completing a challenging project successfully. Her crew had performed professionally despite the unusual coordination requirements, and the final result met all technical specifications. Thursday morning brought Mitchell's team for their first training session using the completed range. Sarah remained at the site to observe the wall's performance under actual operational conditions and to ensure that all safety systems functioned as designed. The morning training session proceeded without incident. The new wall absorbed high-velocity impacts exactly as the engineering specifications had predicted, and the sound dampening characteristics were noticeably improved over the previous installation. After the session concluded, Mitchell approached Sarah with his assessment. Perfect performance from our operational perspective, he said. The wall exceeds our requirements in every category. I'm glad to hear that. It's always satisfying when a project meets its intended purpose. Mitchell smiled. Speaking of intended purposes, are you still planning to attend Friday's briefing session? Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Friday afternoon found Sarah at Camp Pendleton in a conference room she'd never seen before. The briefing session included Mitchell, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, and several other military personnel whose roles weren't immediately clear to Sarah. The project details were more complex than Sarah had anticipated. The overseas construction work involved building secure facilities in a region where military operations were ongoing. The civilian contractor would work directly with military engineering teams to construct hardened communications facilities and defensive positions. The timeline is approximately 6 months, explained Commander Hayes. The contractor would be embedded with our engineering unit for the duration of the deployment. Sarah asked detailed questions about living conditions, safety protocols, and the specific construction challenges she would face. The military team answered her questions thoroughly and honestly, including frank discussions about the security risks involved. I want to be completely transparent about the dangers, Mitchell said. This isn't a construction project in peaceful territory. You'd be working in an active operational zone where hostile forces represent a real threat. Sarah appreciated the honesty, even as it made the decision more difficult. What specific expertise are you looking for that you can't get from military engineering personnel? She asked. Specialized concrete work and structural reinforcement, replied the project's technical coordinator, a Marine Corps engineer. Your experience with bulletproof construction and foundation work in challenging conditions makes you an ideal candidate. The briefing session lasted 3 hours, covering everything from mission objectives to emergency evacuation procedures. Sarah left with a comprehensive information packet and a firm deadline for her decision. The following week passed quietly as Sarah considered her options. She consulted with her business partner about the impact of a 6-month absence on their company operations. She researched the overseas location and studied the technical requirements of the proposed construction work. Thursday evening brought an unexpected phone call from Mitchell. Sarah, I have additional information that might affect your decision, he said. What kind of information? The project timeline has been accelerated. We need a decision by Monday, with deployment possible as early as the following week. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. The accelerated timeline meant less time to prepare her business for her absence, and less time to mentally prepare herself for such a significant undertaking. That's much faster than we originally discussed, she said. I understand the pressure that puts on you. But the operational requirements have changed, and we need to move quickly. Friday morning found Sarah standing at the completed shooting range wall, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this decision point. 3 weeks earlier, she'd been a local contractor focused on a routine construction project. Now she was considering military deployment to a foreign country. Her phone rang with a call from her father. How are you feeling about the decision, Mija? Carlos asked. Nervous, excited, uncertain, Sarah replied honestly. That's exactly how I felt before my first deployment, her father said. The unknown is always scary, but sometimes it's also where you discover what you're really capable of. Sarah considered his words as she watched Mike Patterson setting up the range for the morning's civilian shooting sessions. The wall she'd built would serve its purpose for decades, protecting people and enabling them to improve their skills safely. Monday morning arrived with Sarah's decision made. She called Mitchell to arrange a meeting at the shooting range where their professional relationship had begun. Mitchell arrived promptly at 9 o'clock, finding Sarah standing next to the completed wall. I've made my decision, Sarah said without preamble. Mitchell waited quietly for her answer. I'm accepting the overseas assignment, she said. When do we start the preparation process? Mitchell smiled with genuine approval. I was hoping you'd say that. The preparation process begins immediately. Over the next hour, Mitchell outlined the intensive preparation schedule that would consume the following week. Medical examinations, security clearance processing, equipment fitting, and cultural briefings would fill Sarah's days leading up to deployment. One final question, Sarah said as their planning session concluded. Why did you choose me for this assignment? You must know dozens of contractors with overseas experience. Mitchell considered the question carefully before answering. Because during this project, I watched you handle every challenge with professionalism and attention to detail. But, more importantly, I watched you understand that some work is bigger than just building things. Some work is about supporting people who depend on you to do your job perfectly, regardless of the circumstances. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction at Mitchell's words. Her father's lessons about service and responsibility had prepared her for this moment, even though she hadn't realized it at the time. The following Thursday found Sarah at the shooting range one final time before deployment. Mitchell's team was conducting their regular training session, but this time Sarah was observing as a colleague rather than a civilian contractor. Her military-issued equipment felt strange, but purposeful. The body armor, communications gear, and deployment pack represented her transition from civilian constructor to military contractor. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than the physical equipment. After the training session, Mitchell approached for their final domestic conversation. "Any last-minute concerns?" he asked. "Just the normal pre-deployment nervousness," Sarah replied. "My father says that's a good sign." "Your father is right. The people who aren't nervous are usually the ones who don't fully understand what they're getting into." Sarah nodded, appreciating Mitchell's honesty about the challenges ahead. "One last thing," Mitchell said, reaching into his equipment bag. "I want you to understand something about the work you're about to undertake." Mitchell pulled out his service rifle, a precision instrument that had served him through multiple deployments. He checked the weapon carefully, ensuring it was completely safe, then extended it toward Sarah. "This rifle has been with me through 7 deployments," Mitchell said. "It saved my life and the lives of my teammates more times than I can count." Sarah accepted the weapon, feeling its balanced weight and understanding the significance of Mitchell's gesture. "The facilities you're going to build overseas will serve the same purpose," Mitchell continued. "They'll protect people and enable them to complete their missions successfully. Your construction work will directly impact whether people come home safely." Sarah held the rifle carefully, understanding that Mitchell was sharing something deeply personal about the nature of their work. "This isn't just about building walls and pouring concrete," Mitchell said. "This is about understanding that every detail of your work affects someone's ability to survive and succeed in a dangerous environment." Mitchell stepped back, allowing Sarah to fully appreciate the weight of responsibility represented by the weapon in her hands. "I understand," Sarah said quietly. The moment crystallized everything about the journey that had brought her to this point. 3 weeks earlier, she'd been fixing a shooting range wall. Now she was preparing to deploy with a Navy SEAL team to build facilities that would protect military personnel in a combat zone. As Sarah carefully returned the rifle to Mitchell, she realized that accepting this assignment meant more than advancing her construction career. It meant joining a community of people dedicated to protecting others through their specialized skills and absolute commitment to excellence. Friday morning brought Sarah's final preparations before deployment. Her father drove her to Camp Pendleton for the departure ceremonies, both of them quiet with the magnitude of the moment. "Remember what I taught you about doing your job perfectly," Carlos said as they approached the base gates. "Every time, regardless of the circumstances," Sarah replied, completing the lesson he'd taught her since childhood. As Sarah joined Mitchell's team for the deployment briefing, she felt the weight of 3 generations of family service. Her grandfather had served in Vietnam, her father in Afghanistan, and now she would serve in her own way, building the infrastructure that would protect others. The shooting range wall she'd constructed would stand for decades as a testament to her technical skill. The facilities she was about to build overseas would serve as a testament to her commitment to something larger than herself. Mitchell caught her eye as the briefing began, offering a slight nod of acknowledgement. They were no longer contractor and military personnel coordinating a construction project. They were teammates preparing to deploy together in service of their country's mission. Sarah opened her briefing folder, ready to begin the next chapter of her professional life and personal journey of service.